The fifth chapter of the second book of Kings contains one of the most tightly constructed and psychologically satisfying stories in the entire Hebrew Bible. It's a story about power and disease, about pride and humiliation, about what stands between a person and their healing, and what happens when that obstacle is finally removed. Its protagonist is Naaman, and he is a man who has everything and one thing he cannot fix. Now, Naaman was commander of the army of the king of Aram. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. One sentence: great man, highly regarded, valiant soldier, but. The but is his whole story. Today we read Naaman with Alfred Adler. Adler's framework begins with the universal experience of inferiority, the felt smallness, inadequacy, or incompleteness that every human being carries in some form. In a healthy person, the experience of inferiority is the spur to growth. It drives the effort, the development of competence, the contribution to the community that Adler called social interest. The inferiority is the engine, not the destination. But in what Adler identified as the neurotic response to inferiority, something different happens. The person who cannot tolerate the experience of felt inadequacy, who cannot sit with the gap between who they are and who they need to be, tends to develop compensatory strategies that protect them from the exposure of their vulnerability. They build, around the tender place of their insufficiency, a structure of superiority, status, power, achievement, and the performance of greatness. The compensation is real, the achievements are genuine, but it is in the service of concealment rather than growth. Naaman is a brilliant instance of this structure. Everything about his public identity is a compensation. He is the commander of the army. He has won the king's favor. He is a valiant soldier. He is great, highly regarded and successful. And he has leprosy, a disease he cannot command, cannot outrank, cannot win against, a vulnerability that his entire constructed identity cannot touch. The chain of events that brings Naaman to the prophet Elisha begins with a captured Israelite girl. She is a slave in Naaman's household, nameless, powerless, at the very bottom of the social order of the story. And she says to Naaman's wife, "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." This detail matters enormously. The healing does not begin with a great man seeking out a great solution. It begins with a slave girl's offhand remark to her mistress. The information that starts the whole story moving comes from the person in the story with the least power and the least status. Adler was deeply attentive to what he called the overlooked resource, the contribution that comes from the person or quarter that pride has learned to discount. The person whose inferiority complex has been compensated by the construction of superiority tends to be selectively blind. They notice what confirms their greatness and overlook what challenges it, including the insights and contribution of those they consider beneath them. The fact that Naaman receives the information that saves him from a slave girl is the first indication that his healing will require him to look in places his pride would prefer to ignore. He goes to the king of Aram. The king sends him to the king of Israel with a letter and a substantial gift: 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. This is the scale of response appropriate to Naaman's status, the royal approach, a royal gift, a transaction between kings. The king of Israel reads the letter and tears his clothes. He says, "Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this man send someone to me to be cured of leprosy? He thinks he is picking a quarrel with me. Power addressing power, and the transaction is impossible. The king of Israel cannot heal Naaman, and the attempt to work through the official channels, king to king, gift commensurate with status, produces only distress on one side and confusion on the other. Elisha hears that the king has torn his clothes. He sends a message. Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel. Naaman comes with his horses and his chariots and stands at the door of Elisha's house. This is the picture. The great general of Aram, with all his military retinue, parked outside a prophet's door in Samaria, the full weight of his status arrayed at the threshold. And Elisha does not come out. He sends a messenger, and the messenger says, Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed. Naaman is furious. He goes away in a rage. And here is where Adler's analysis becomes most precise. Because Naaman's rage is not simply the frustration of a man who didn't get what he wanted. It is the rage of a man whose superiority structure has been structurally violated, not once, but several times in rapid succession. First, Elisha did not come out to meet him. A man of Naaman's rank, arriving with horses and chariots, expects the prophet to appear in person, stand before him, wave his hand over his disease, call on his God, and effect the cure dramatically. The theatre of healing that Naaman expected is the theatre appropriate to his status. But Elisha sends a message. He doesn't even come to the door. Naaman says, I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot, and cure me of my leprosy. I thought he would come out to me. The expectation is explicit. The healer should come to him, not he to the healer. His rank requires that the approach be made in the right direction. Second, the prescription is humiliating in its simplicity. Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times. The Jordan, not the Abana or the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, which are better than any of the rivers of Israel. Why couldn't he wash in those rivers and be clean? The prescription is an affront to his status on 2 counts. First, it is simple. It requires no special effort, no great achievement, nothing commensurate with his greatness. Second, it requires him to use an inferior river. An Aramaean general washing in the Jordan is an Aramaean general performing a Jewish ablution in a provincially Jewish stream. The healing, if it comes, will not come on his terms. It will come on terms he cannot control and did not choose. Adler would find in Naaman's rage the textbook expression of what he called the superiority complex in its most exposed moments. The superiority complex, the compensatory structure built over the experience of inferiority, depends for its functioning on being respected, on being treated in proportion to its own assessment of its importance. When it is not respected, when Elisha stays inside and sends a message, when the river prescribed is the Jordan, the whole structure vibrates with indignation. Because the indignation is not really about the river. The indignation is about what the river reveals, that the healing that Naaman needs is not available on the terms his superiority has set. It will not come through the exercise of his power. It will not come through the appropriate exchange of status and recognition. It will come through the simple, humiliating act of washing in a foreign river 7 times. The healing requires what the superiority cannot give: submission, not to Elisha exactly, not even to the God of Israel exactly. Submission to the prescription, submission to the process, the willingness to do the thing that is offered rather than the thing that would be appropriate to one's rank. And then the servants come. His servants went to him and said, My father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed? This moment, the servant's reasoning with the general, is one of the most delicate and most psychologically intelligent exchanges in the Bible. They do not confront his pride directly. They do not say, you are being ridiculous. They say, you would have done a great thing. This is a small thing. Are you willing to do less than you would have done if more had been required? It is an Adlerian intervention of rare precision. Adler's concept of encouragement, helping the person reconnect with the courage that they already have by offering a frame in which the action required is seen as possible, is exactly what the servants are doing. They are not removing Naaman's pride, they are offering a way to move through it. The great man who would do great things can surely do this small thing. He goes down to the Jordan and dips 7 times, as the man of God had told him, and his flesh is restored and became clean like that of a young boy. The flesh before the leprosy, before the compensations, before the rank and the chariots and the victories. The healing does not restore the general, it restores the boy underneath the general. What is made clean is not the success, but the person prior to the success. Naaman returns to Elisha and says, now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. He offers gifts. Elisha refuses them. Naaman asks for 2 mule loads of earth to take home, so that wherever he is, he can stand on Israelite soil when he worships the God of Israel. He goes home with his 2 mule loads of earth and his restored skin. He is still the commander of the army of Aram. He is still a great man and highly regarded, but something has changed in the structure of that greatness. He has been where the superiority could not go. He has done the simple thing. He has washed in the Jordan. Adler believed that genuine psychological health, the kind of health that comes not from compensation, but from the ground up, requires at some point the willingness to be small, not permanently, not as a final condition, but as the act of submission that allows the healing to reach what this superiority was built to protect. The leprosy in Naaman's story is not only a disease of the skin, it is the disease that the performance of greatness cannot fix. The river is the Jordan. It is not the Abana or the Pharpar. It is available to anyone 7 times, and you come up with the skin of a child.